The shuttle descended through purple clouds toward the massive palace below. Jake Morrison pressed his face against the window, watching the alien city grow larger. He had never seen anything like it. Crystal towers stretched toward the sky, and buildings glowed with soft light even in the daytime. This was Vespera Prime, the capital world of the Kaldrith Empire. Jake took a deep breath and straightened his uniform. He was a linguist and diplomat for Earth, but he still felt nervous. Humans had only joined the Galactic Council 20 years ago. Most alien species still saw them as newcomers, maybe even primitive, but the Kaldrith Emperor had specifically requested human representatives, and Jake wanted to make a good impression. Sitting across from him was Dr. Lisa Hayes, a woman in her 40s with kind eyes and graying hair. She studied alien cultures and had read everything available about the Kaldrith. Next to her sat Commander Ben Carter, a tall man with broad shoulders and a serious face. He was their military escort, though Jake hoped they wouldn't need protection. "Why do you think they called us?" Lisa asked, looking up from her tablet. The message was so urgent, but they didn't explain why. Jake shook his head. "I don't know. The Emperor said it was a matter of great importance. That's all we got," Ben frowned. "I don't like going in blind. We should be prepared for anything." The shuttle landed on a platform near the palace entrance. As the door opened, Jake felt warm air rush in, carrying strange but pleasant scents. A group of Kaldrith officials waited for them. The aliens were tall and elegant, with lavender skin and large dark eyes. They wore flowing robes that seemed to shimmer and change color slightly. An elderly Kaldrith stepped forward and bowed. "Welcome, humans. I am Vorath, chief healer to the Imperial family. Please follow me. The Emperor is waiting." They walked through corridors that seemed to be made of living crystal. Everything was beautiful but cold somehow. Jake noticed that the Kaldrith they passed stared at them with curiosity, and some looked worried or afraid. Something was definitely wrong here. Vorath led them into a large chamber where the Emperor sat on a throne that looked like it was carved from a single massive gemstone. The Emperor was older than the others, with silver markings on his face. His eyes were tired and sad. "Thank you for coming," the Emperor said. His voice was deep and heavy with emotion. "I apologize for the mystery, but I did not want to explain everything through communication channels. The matter is too sensitive." Jake stepped forward and bowed as he had been taught. "Your Majesty, we are honored to help in any way we can." The Emperor stood and walked down from his throne. He seemed smaller now, less like a ruler and more like a worried father. "My daughter, Princess Ariana, is dying, or perhaps something worse than death. Her mind is trapped and we cannot reach her." Lisa gasped softly. "What happened to her?" Vorath answered. 3 weeks ago, the princess was exploring the old vaults beneath the palace. She found an artifact, something left behind by the precursors. When she touched it, she collapsed. She has not truly awakened since." Jake had heard of the precursors in his studies. They were an ancient civilization that had existed millions of years ago. Long before any current species had evolved, they had vanished mysteriously, leaving behind only ruins and strange artifacts that no one could fully understand. "We have tried everything," the Emperor continued. "Our best healers, our most powerful technology, even experts from other council species. Nothing works. She breathes. Her heart beats, but her mind is somewhere else. Somewhere we cannot follow. Why call for humans?" Ben asked, his military training making him suspicious. "We're the newest members of the council. Surely there are others with more experience with precursor artifacts." Vorath and the Emperor exchanged glances. Finally, Vorath spoke. "We have called representatives from many species. All have failed. But there is something different about humans. Your minds work in unusual ways. You think thoughts that other species find difficult or impossible. Perhaps this difference is what we need." The Emperor looked directly at Jake. "Will you try? Will you see my daughter and attempt what others could not?" Jake felt the weight of the request. He wasn't a healer or a scientist. He just studied languages and tried to help different species understand each other, but he could see the desperation in the Emperor's eyes. The same look any father would have when his child was in danger. "I'll do whatever I can," Jake said. They followed Vorath through more corridors until they reached a guarded door. Inside, the room was filled with soft blue light. Princess Ariana lay on a bed that seemed to float slightly above the floor. She was young, maybe the equivalent of mid-20s in human years, with the same lavender skin as other Kaldrith, but somehow more delicate. Her eyes were open, but they didn't see anything. They just stared at the ceiling, empty and lost. Floating above a nearby table was the artifact. It was a small black cube, perfectly smooth except for markings carved into its surface. The markings seemed to shift and change when Jake looked at them, making his eyes hurt. Everyone who has tried to study the artifact closely has suffered mental pain, Vorath explained. Some have had nightmares for days. One scientist from the Vexer species lost consciousness for 6 hours. We keep it contained now, but we cannot move it far from the princess. When we tried, her condition worsened. Jake approached the princess carefully. She was beautiful, even in this terrible state. He felt a strange pull, like he was meant to be here, meant to help her somehow. Can I be alone with her? Jake asked. And with the artifact? Vorath looked shocked. That would be dangerous. If something happens, I know the risks, Jake interrupted. But if I'm going to help, I need to try things my own way. Human way. The Emperor, who had followed them, nodded slowly. Give him what he asks. We have nothing left to lose. Lisa grabbed Jake's arm. Are you sure about this? Jake smiled at her, trying to look more confident than he felt. No, but I have to try. They all left, though Jake could see them watching through a transparent wall. He was alone now with the sleeping princess and the mysterious cube. He took a deep breath and stepped closer to the artifact, ready to face whatever came next. The markings on the cube seemed to glow brighter as he approached, and Jake felt his heart beating faster. Something about those symbols called to him, spoke to something deep in his human mind. He didn't know what would happen next, but he knew one thing for certain. This was just the beginning. Jake stood in the quiet room staring at the black cube. The artifact floated in the containment field, its surface covered with strange symbols that seemed to move and shift. Every time he tried to focus on one marking, it would blur and another would become clear. It was like the cube didn't want to be understood. He glanced at Princess Ariana lying on the floating bed. Her chest rose and fell slowly, but her eyes remained empty and distant. Whatever had trapped her mind was powerful, and Jake had no idea if he could help her. But he had to try. Outside the transparent wall, he could see Lisa, Ben, Vorath, and the Emperor watching him. They looked worried. Jake turned away from them and focused on the artifact again. He pulled out his tablet and started taking notes on the symbols, trying to find patterns. Hours passed. Jake's eyes grew tired, but he kept studying. The symbols weren't like any language he knew, yet something about them felt familiar. They reminded him of very old human languages, the kind that existed before writing systems became complex. Simple languages that focused on feelings and basic ideas rather than complicated grammar. His communicator buzzed. It was Lisa. Jake, you've been in there for 4 hours. You need to take a break. Not yet, Jake replied. I'm starting to see something. These symbols, they're not just words. They're more like emotional codes. They represent feelings and states of mind rather than objects or actions. That's fascinating, Lisa said, her voice excited despite her worry. The precursors must have understood consciousness differently than we do. But Jake, be careful. Several alien experts said the same thing before they collapsed. What made them collapse? Jake asked. There was a pause. Then Lisa said, they tried to read the symbols out loud. The sounds affected their minds directly. It was like the language bypassed logic and went straight to their consciousness. Jake looked at the cube again. That made sense. Most alien species he had met thought in very logical, structured ways. Their languages were precise and orderly. But human languages were messy, full of words that meant different things depending on context, full of metaphors and emotions that didn't follow strict rules. Maybe that was the key. Jake spent another hour comparing the symbols to ancient human languages. He found similarities to Sumerian, to early Chinese characters, even to cave paintings. The precursors seemed to use concepts that humans had also discovered independently. That couldn't be a coincidence. Finally, he identified 3 distinct phrases carved into different faces of the cube. Each phrase was a paradox, a statement that contradicted itself. The first one seemed to say something like, I am wrong, but I am also right. The second was, this moment lasts forever and also ends immediately. The third was the hardest to translate, but it meant something like, I give up control while staying free. Jake felt his heart racing. These were impossible statements. They didn't make logical sense. That must be why the other aliens failed. Species like the Kaldrith thought in strict logical hierarchies. Their minds couldn't accept contradictions without experiencing severe mental stress. But humans were different. Humans dealt with contradictions every day. They could feel happy and sad at the same time. They could believe something was wrong while also understanding why someone would think it was right. Human minds were comfortable with paradoxes because human emotions didn't follow logic. Jake touched his communicator again. Lisa, I think I know what's happening. The artifact is a lock and these symbols are the key. But the key only works if someone can think in contradictions without their mind breaking. Are you saying humans can open it because we're comfortable with paradoxes? Lisa asked. Exactly, Jake said. The precursors must have known that most species would evolve with logical, ordered minds. They created this test to find species that think differently, species that can handle impossible ideas. Ben's voice came through the communicator. Jake, if you're right, this could be dangerous. If you speak those words and something goes wrong, your mind could end up trapped like the princess. Jake looked at Ariana. She looked so peaceful yet so lost. He couldn't leave her like this. He wouldn't. I have to try, Jake said. If I don't, she'll stay trapped forever. He heard arguing outside the room. The Emperor was telling the guards to let Jake continue, while Vorath was protesting that it was too dangerous. Finally, the Emperor's voice came through clearly. The human will try. That is my command. Jake took a deep breath. He walked closer to the princess and gently took her hand. It was cool and soft. He held it firmly, hoping somehow she could feel his presence. Then he looked at the cube and began to speak. The first phrase came out awkwardly. He had to pronounce sounds that human vocal cords weren't designed to make. But he managed it, speaking slowly and clearly. I am wrong, but I am also right. The cube pulsed with light. Princess Ariana's hand twitched in his. Outside, he heard gasps from the observers. But Jake kept going. This moment lasts forever and also ends immediately, he said, speaking the second phrase. His voice grew stronger, more confident. The words felt strange in his mouth, but his mind accepted them easily. They were paradoxes, but humans understood paradoxes. The cube's light grew brighter. Princess Ariana's body began to tremble slightly. Jake held her hand tighter. I give up control while staying free, Jake said, speaking the final phrase. The cube exploded with brilliant light, so bright that Jake had to close his eyes. He felt energy washing over him like a wave, but it didn't hurt. It felt warm, almost welcoming. He heard a sound like music, but not any music he had ever heard before. It was the sound of thoughts and feelings made audible. Then the light faded. Jake opened his eyes. Princess Ariana was staring at him. Her eyes were focused now, truly seeing him. Tears ran down her lavender cheeks, but she was trembling, shaking so hard that the floating bed began to move. She gripped his hand with surprising strength, her mouth open but no words coming out. The artifact cube had stopped glowing. It was just black stone now, ordinary and harmless. Guards rushed into the room. Vorath ran to the princess, checking her with various devices. The Emperor stood in the doorway, tears on his own face, unable to move. Jake knelt beside the bed, still holding Ariana's hand. It's okay, he said softly. You're safe now. You're back. The princess's trembling slowly decreased, but she didn't let go of his hand. She stared at him with wide eyes filled with wonder and fear and something else Jake couldn't identify. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely a whisper. What are you? The palace erupted with celebration. Guards cheered, healers embraced each other, and the Emperor fell to his knees in relief. Princess Ariana was awake. The impossible had happened, and a human had done what no other species could accomplish. But Jake noticed something the others didn't. The princess was awake, but she wasn't celebrating. She held his hand in a grip so tight it almost hurt, and she kept staring at him with eyes that showed both amazement and terror. Her trembling had lessened, but it hadn't stopped completely. Vorath tried to examine her, but she shook her head and pulled Jake closer. Don't leave, she whispered. Please don't leave me yet. I won't, Jake promised, though he didn't understand why she needed him to stay. The Emperor approached slowly, as if afraid his daughter might disappear again. Ariana, my child, can you hear me? Do you know who I am? Father, she said, her voice weak but clear. Yes, I know you. I know everything now, too much. So much that my mind can barely hold it all. Lisa and Ben entered the room carefully. Lisa had her medical scanner out, checking readings. Her brain activity is off the charts, Lisa said quietly. She's processing information at a rate I've never seen before, even for a Kaldrith. Over the next few hours, the princess recovered enough to sit up. She refused to let go of Jake's hand the entire time, which made things awkward, but no one dared to complain. The Emperor ordered servants to bring food and water. Jake was hungry but found it difficult to eat with only one hand free. Finally, when the room had cleared except for Jake, Lisa, Ben, the Emperor, and Vorath, Princess Ariana began to explain what had happened to her. The artifact was a message, she said, her voice stronger now, and a test. The precursors left it behind millions of years ago before they vanished from this universe. Vanished? The Emperor asked. You mean they died? No, Ariana shook her head. They transcended. They moved beyond physical form, beyond this reality into something higher. But before they left, they wanted to leave something behind. They wanted to find species that might one day be worthy of their knowledge and their legacy. She paused and looked at Jake with those intense eyes. The artifacts are locks. Each one tests a different aspect of consciousness. This one tested the ability to hold paradoxes, to accept contradictions without the mind breaking apart. Most species in the galaxy cannot do this. Vorath leaned forward. But why? Why would the ability to accept contradictions matter so much? Because reality itself is full of paradoxes, Ariana explained. Light is both a wave and a particle. Time moves forward but can bend. Consciousness is both individual and connected to everything. The precursors understood this. They evolved beyond logic into something deeper, and they wanted to find species who could follow that same path. Jake felt uncomfortable with everyone staring at him. So humans can do this? We can accept paradoxes? More than any species the precursors encountered, Ariana said. Your minds are different. You can feel contradictory emotions at the same time. You can believe two opposite things and not go insane. You create art and music and stories that don't follow logical rules but still make sense to you. Your species has what the precursors called paradox minds. Ben crossed his arms. That sounds impressive, but why is it so important? Princess Ariana finally released Jake's hand and stood up. She walked to the window and looked out at her city. There are dozens of precursor artifacts hidden across the galaxy. The Council has locked most of them away because no species could interact with them safely. Ships have been lost trying to explore precursor ruins. Entire research teams have gone mad studying precursor technology. She turned back to face them. But humans can unlock them. Humans can access the knowledge and power that the precursors left behind. This makes your species potentially the most powerful in the galaxy. The room fell silent. Jake felt a chill run down his spine. He had just wanted to help a dying princess. He hadn't thought about the bigger implications. The Emperor spoke carefully. Princess, you said you know too much now. What did you learn from the artifact? Everything it contained, she said. The precursors filled it with knowledge about consciousness, reality, and the nature of the universe. But there's a problem. She looked at Jake again. I'm Kaldrith. My mind wasn't designed to hold paradoxical thoughts. The knowledge is tearing at my consciousness, trying to fit into patterns that don't work for it. Are you in pain? Vorath asked, alarmed. No, Ariana said. Or yes, or both. You see, I can't even describe it properly anymore. The human saved me by speaking the words and opening the lock. But in doing so, he also changed me. I can think thoughts now that no Kaldrith has ever thought. I can see reality in ways that my species cannot comprehend, and I don't know if that's a gift or a curse. She looked at her father. Some of our people will say I'm enlightened. Others will say I'm corrupted. Both will be right. The Emperor looked old suddenly, tired and overwhelmed. What do we do now? We tell the Council, Ariana said firmly. We tell them that humans have the ability to unlock precursor secrets. We tell them everything. That's dangerous, Ben said immediately. If other species know that humans can access precursor technology, they'll either try to use us or try to stop us. Probably both. He's right, Lisa added. This could make Earth a target. Ariana nodded. Yes, it could. But secrets like this don't stay hidden. Someone at the palace will talk. The news will spread. Better to control the narrative now than let rumors and fear spread first. Jake had been quiet, thinking. Now he spoke up. What about you, Princess? What will happen to you? She smiled sadly. I don't know. I'm not fully Kaldrith anymore, not in my mind. But I'm not human either. I'm something in between, something new. The artifact showed me that the precursors encountered this problem before. When different species tried to use their technology, some were changed by it. Changed how? The Emperor asked, fear in his voice. Some went mad, Ariana admitted, but others evolved. They became bridges between different ways of thinking. I believe that's what I am now. A bridge between the logical Kaldrith mind and the paradoxical human mind. She walked back to Jake and took his hand again, though gently this time. I need your help, she said. All of you. The council will meet soon to discuss this situation. They'll be afraid. They'll want to lock humans away or control them or maybe even destroy Earth to prevent you from becoming too powerful. That's a cheerful thought, Ben muttered. But if I stand with you, Ariana continued, if I show them that humans can be trusted with precursor knowledge, if I demonstrate that this power can be used for good rather than conquest, then maybe we have a chance. Maybe we can show the galaxy that humanity deserves to inherit what the precursors left behind. The Emperor stood and placed a hand on his daughter's shoulder. You would do this? You would risk everything for a species you barely know? Ariana looked at Jake. He risked everything for me. He spoke forbidden words that could have destroyed his mind, all to save someone he had never met. That tells me everything I need to know about humans. They may be paradoxical and emotional and illogical by our standards, but they're also brave and compassionate and capable of incredible things. She squeezed Jake's hand. Besides, I saw something else in the artifact's knowledge. A warning. The precursors destroyed themselves eventually. They grew too powerful, too confident. They stopped knowing when to show restraint. Humanity needs to learn from their mistakes, and I need to help humanity learn. Because if you follow the same path as the precursors, the entire galaxy might burn. Jake looked at the others. Lisa seemed excited despite the danger. Ben looked worried but determined, and the Emperor looked like a father who was both proud of his daughter and terrified of losing her. So what happens now? Jake asked. Princess Ariana smiled, and for the first time since waking, she looked truly calm. Now we prepare. The council will summon us within days. We need to be ready to show them that humanity is not a threat but a hope, and we need to find the other precursor sites before someone else does. Someone else? Lisa asked. There are forces in the galaxy that would use precursor power for conquest, Ariana said darkly. And now that one artifact has been opened, the others will start waking up. It's a race now, and humanity is in the lead. The question is whether the rest of the galaxy will help you or try to stop you. She looked out the window again at the crystal city beyond. Everything is about to change. For humans, for Kaldrith, for everyone. The age of the precursors is returning, and we must be ready. 3 days after Princess Ariana woke up, the news spread across the galaxy like wildfire. Human diplomat unlocks precursor artifact. Kaldrith princess transformed. Humanity has the key to ancient power. The headlines varied, but the message was the same. Everything had changed. Jake found himself in the center of a political storm he never wanted. Ambassadors from a dozen species arrived at the palace, all demanding to speak with him. Some were curious. Some were angry. Some were afraid. And a few looked at him like he was a weapon they wanted to control. The Emperor held a council meeting in the Great Hall. Representatives from the major Galactic Council species sat in a circle, their translators buzzing with multiple languages. Jake sat between Lisa and Ben, feeling very small and very human. Princess Ariana sat with her father on the raised platform, looking regal but still occasionally trembling when she thought no one was watching. A tall ambassador from the Vexor species stood first. The Vexor looked like walking crystals, their bodies geometric and precise. This is unacceptable, the ambassador said, their voice harsh through the translator. One species cannot have sole access to precursor technology. It creates an imbalance of power. We're not claiming ownership of anything, Jake tried to explain. We just helped the princess. That's all? That's all? Another ambassador scoffed. This one was from the Tharn Collective, a species that looked like mobile plants with too many limbs. You unlocked a precursor artifact that has resisted study for 2,000 years. You accessed knowledge that drove our best scientists to madness, and you did it in less than a day. Humans are dangerous, said a small ambassador from the Quill species, who resembled an armored bird. Their minds work in chaotic ways. They don't respect proper mental discipline. Giving them access to precursor power is like giving explosives to children. Ben stood up, his military bearing making him look imposing even among aliens. With respect, we didn't ask for this. We came here to help. If you have a problem with the outcome, Maybe your species should have been better at solving the puzzle. Several ambassadors started shouting. The translator couldn't keep up with all the different languages overlapping. The Emperor had to strike a crystal chime 3 times to restore order. Enough, the Emperor said firmly. The humans spoke truly. They came at my invitation to save my daughter. They succeeded where others failed. This is not their fault. But it is their responsibility, said an older ambassador from the Dreth Federation, a species known for their diplomatic skill. Whether they intended it or not, humans now have access to power that could reshape the galaxy. We must decide how to handle this situation carefully. Princess Ariana stood up. The hall fell silent. She rarely spoke at council meetings, and everyone knew she was different now, changed by her contact with the artifact. The precursors left these artifacts as tests, she said clearly. They wanted to find species worthy of their knowledge. Humanity passed the test. That is the simple truth. Now we must decide what that means for our future. It means humans should be supervised, the Vexor ambassador said. All precursor sites should be locked down. Humans should only be allowed to access them under strict council control. That's basically making us prisoners, Lisa protested. You want to use our abilities but not give us any freedom? We want to protect the galaxy, the Vexor replied coldly, including from humanity itself. Power corrupts. Absolute power corrupts absolutely. Precursor power is as absolute as power gets. Jake felt anger rising in his chest. They were talking about his entire species like they were children or criminals. But before he could speak, Princess Ariana held up her hand. There is another option, she said. Humanity could refuse the precursor legacy entirely. They could choose not to pursue any other artifacts, not to seek any more precursor knowledge. They could remain as they are. The hall went quiet. Everyone looked at Jake as if he could speak for all of humanity. Is that what you want? Jake asked her directly. You want us to just walk away from all of this? Ariana's eyes were sad. I want humanity to be safe, and I'm not sure that accessing precursor power will make you safe. It might make you a target instead. As if to prove her point, alarms suddenly blared throughout the palace. Guards rushed into the hall, their weapons drawn. Forath appeared, looking panicked. Your Majesty, the healer said urgently. There's been an attack. Someone tried to assassinate the human delegation. Jake felt his blood go cold. Lisa grabbed his arm. Ben was already on his feet, scanning the room for threats. What happened? The Emperor demanded. A bomb was placed in their quarters, Forath explained. It was designed to look like an accident, a malfunction in the environmental systems. But our security caught it during a routine scan. Who did this? The Emperor's voice was like thunder. We don't know yet, Forath said, but the technology used was Vexor in origin. Every eye turned to the Vexor ambassador, who looked genuinely shocked. We had nothing to do with this. Someone is trying to frame our species. Or someone in your delegation acted alone, Ben said darkly. Seems convenient that you were just arguing humans are too dangerous and suddenly someone tries to kill us. The meeting dissolved into chaos. Accusations flew. Security guards escorted the human delegation out of the hall for their own protection. Princess Ariana followed them along with her personal guards. They were taken to a secure room deep in the palace. Jake's hands were shaking. Someone had tried to kill them. The reality of the situation hit him hard. This wasn't just politics anymore. This was life and death. I'm sorry, Ariana said quietly. I knew there would be resistance, but I didn't think it would turn violent so quickly. It's not your fault, Lisa said, though she looked pale. We all knew this was risky. We need to leave Vespera Prime, Ben said firmly. It's not safe here anymore. Too many species with too many different agendas. Leave and go where? Jake asked. Earth? That just puts our whole planet at risk. Ariana looked thoughtful. There is another option. The precursors left behind a massive archive in neutral space. It's called the Archive of Echoes. No species has ever successfully entered it because the defenses are designed to repel logical minds. But humans could get in, Lisa said, understanding immediately. Possibly, Ariana confirmed. If we go there, we accomplish 2 things. First, we remove the human delegation from immediate danger. Second, we attempt to access more precursor knowledge, which might give us answers about how to handle the situation. Or we could just trigger more defenses that kill us, Ben pointed out. There's that risk, Ariana admitted. But staying here is also dangerous. At least at the archive, we control the situation. Jake thought about it. Every option seemed bad in different ways. But Ariana was right about one thing. They couldn't just sit here waiting for another assassination attempt. What does your father think? He asked. He's scared, Ariana said honestly. Scared for me, scared for the Empire, scared of what all this means. But he trusts me. If I say we should go to the archive, he'll support that decision. A guard knocked on the door and entered. Your Highness, the Emperor requests your presence. There's been a development. They followed the guard back to the Emperor's private chambers. The old ruler looked exhausted, sitting on a simple chair rather than his throne. Several advisors stood around him, all looking worried. They found who planted the bomb, the Emperor said without preamble. It was a Tharn ambassador's aide. But he wasn't working alone. There's a conspiracy, Ariana. Multiple species coordinating to either control or eliminate humanity before you can access more precursor sites. How many species? Ben asked. At least 4 that we can confirm, one of the advisors said. Possibly more. They call themselves the Preservation Coalition. They believe humanity is too dangerous to be allowed to inherit precursor power. So we're at war, Jake said quietly. Not yet, the Emperor replied, but close to it. Which is why I'm making a decision. Ariana, you will take the humans to the Archive of Echoes. You'll have my best ship and my best crew. Find what you can in the archive. Learn what you can, and come back with proof that humanity can be trusted with this power. And if we can't find that proof? Ariana asked. The Emperor looked old and tired. Then we may all be doomed anyway. Because if humanity can't inherit the precursor legacy properly, and if the Preservation Coalition gains control of it instead, they will use that power to enforce their will on the entire galaxy. Either way, everything we know is about to change. He looked at Jake directly. You saved my daughter. Now she will try to save your species. I hope you're both strong enough for what comes next. Jake looked at Ariana, at Lisa, at Ben. They all looked scared but determined. They hadn't asked for this responsibility, but they had it now. The fate of humanity and maybe the whole galaxy rested on what they did next. When do we leave? Jake asked. Tonight, the Emperor said, before the Preservation Coalition realizes what we're planning. The Archive of Echoes is waiting. Let's hope it has answers, because we're running out of time to find them. The ship was called the Starlight Dawn, and it was the most beautiful vessel Jake had ever seen. It was a Caldrith Royal Cruiser, built for both speed and comfort, with elegant curves and crystal windows that showed the stars clearly. The crew consisted of 20 Caldrith and the 4 of them, Jake, Lisa, Ben, and Princess Ariana. They left Vespera Prime in the middle of the night, slipping away while the Preservation Coalition was still dealing with the aftermath of the discovered assassination plot. For 3 weeks they traveled through deep space toward the Archive of Echoes, a mysterious structure orbiting a dead star in neutral territory. During those weeks, Jake spent most of his time with Ariana. They studied everything known about the archive, which wasn't much. They also talked about other things, their different cultures, their hopes and fears, their thoughts about the future. Jake found himself drawn to her in ways he hadn't expected. She was alien, yes, but also familiar somehow. Her mind worked differently now after touching the artifact, and she understood human thinking better than any other non-human he'd met. Lisa spent her time analyzing every piece of data about the precursors they could find. She created theories, ran simulations, and prepared for every possibility she could imagine. Ben trained with the Caldrith guards, learning their fighting techniques and teaching them some human tactics. Everyone was preparing in their own way for what might come. On the 20th day of their journey, they finally saw it. The Archive of Echoes appeared on their screens, and everyone stopped what they were doing to stare. It was enormous, at least the size of Earth's moon, built in impossible geometric patterns that hurt to look at. Parts of it seemed to exist in multiple dimensions at once. Dead stars provided eerie light around it, making the whole scene feel like something from a nightmare. The sensors can't get proper readings, the ship's captain reported. The structure seems to shift its physical properties constantly. It's like it's not fully present in our reality. The precursors built it to keep people away, Ariana explained. Only minds that can accept paradoxes can navigate its defenses. For logical species, just approaching it causes severe mental discomfort. As they drew closer, several crew members started feeling sick. They had headaches, dizziness, and confusion. But Jake, Lisa, and Ben felt fine. If anything, Jake felt drawn to the archive like it was calling to him. This is as close as we can safely get, the captain said. We'll deploy a shuttle with just the 4 of you and a small security team. But when they tried to approach in the shuttle, the security team immediately fell unconscious. Only the humans and Ariana remained awake and functional. Ben had to turn the shuttle around and take the security team back to the ship. Looks like it's just us 4, he said grimly. They approached again in the shuttle, just the 4 of them now. As they got closer to the archive's entrance, Jake saw symbols carved into its surface. They were similar to the ones on the cube that had trapped Ariana, but far more complex. These symbols seemed to flow and change, telling a story that was different each time he looked at it. The entrance opened for them without any effort. It was like the archive had been waiting. Inside, the halls were vast and strange. Gravity didn't work quite right. Sometimes they walked on the floor, sometimes on the walls or ceiling. Time felt weird, too. A minute might pass like an hour, or an hour might feel like seconds. Colors existed that Jake couldn't name, and sounds echoed before they were made. Stay close together, Ariana warned. People have gotten lost in precursor structures before. Some were never found. They walked for what felt like hours through chambers filled with crystalline structures, floating objects, and walls covered in more shifting symbols. Jake tried to read them, tried to understand the patterns, but there was too much information flowing too fast. Finally, they reached a central chamber. It was perfectly circular with a raised platform in the middle. On the platform stood 3 pedestals, each with a glowing sphere floating above it. "This is it," Ariana whispered, "the heart of the archive." As they approached, the spheres began to pulse with light. Images appeared in the air around them, showing them the history of the precursors. Jake saw a civilization that had started much like any other, but had evolved beyond physical limitations. They had learned to manipulate consciousness itself, to reshape reality with thought, to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. But the images also showed their downfall. The precursors had become too powerful, too confident. They had started changing the fundamental nature of reality itself, and they had made mistakes. Reality had fought back, and their civilization had torn itself apart. In the end, they had chosen to transcend entirely rather than fix what they had broken. "They're warning us," Lisa said, her voice filled with awe. "They're showing us what not to do." The images changed, showing the present now. They saw Earth and the various council species. They saw the conflicts, the fears, the greed for power. They saw the Preservation Coalition planning to seize precursor artifacts for themselves. And they saw possible futures, some where humanity brought a new golden age to the galaxy, others where humanity repeated the precursors' mistakes and destroyed everything. Then the spheres spoke, their voices resonating directly in Jake's mind without using sound. "Choose," they said. "Accept the full inheritance and risk our fate. Take only partial knowledge and grow slowly, or reject everything and remain unchanged." Jake looked at his companions. Lisa's eyes were wide with wonder and fear. Ben looked grim and ready for whatever came. Ariana watched him carefully, supporting whatever choice he made. "Why me?" Jake asked the spheres. "Why does a random human diplomat get to make this choice?" "Because you were first," the spheres replied. "Because you spoke the words when others could not. Because you showed compassion before ambition. The choice must be made, and you are here to make it." Jake thought about everything he'd learned. He thought about the precursor's warning, about the dangers of too much power too fast. He thought about the Preservation Coalition and species who wanted to control or destroy humanity. He thought about Princess Ariana, changed forever by her contact with precursor knowledge. "I choose partial knowledge," Jake said firmly. "Give us tools to heal, to explore, to grow, but keep the dangerous things locked away. Humans need to earn that kind of power, not have it handed to us." The spheres glowed brighter. "You have chosen wisely. Restraint is wisdom. Growth without learning is destruction. You may one day be worthy of the full inheritance, but that day is not today." Light poured from the spheres into the 4 of them. Knowledge flowed into their minds. Medical cures for diseases, clean energy technologies, improved space travel methods, communication advancements. It was incredible and overwhelming, but not destructive. It was exactly what humanity needed to leap forward without losing themselves. When the light faded, the spheres spoke one final time. "The test is complete. Humanity has proven itself worthy of guidance but wise enough to refuse domination. Other archive sites across the galaxy will now respond to human presence. Guard them well, use them carefully, and remember, Power without wisdom destroyed us. Do not repeat our mistakes. The platform beneath them began to glow. Before Jake could react, they were transported back to their shuttle, which was now sitting outside the archive. The massive structure was changing, its impossible geometry settling into something more stable. What just happened? Ben asked, looking dizzy. We passed the test, Ariana said, smiling despite tears on her face. And we chose correctly. Back on the Starlight Dawn, they discovered that the knowledge they'd received had been copied to the ship's computers. They had everything they needed to prove to the Council that humanity could be trusted with precursor technology. The journey back to Vespera Prime took another 3 weeks. During that time, news reached them that several other precursor sites had activated across the galaxy, all responding to what had happened at the archive. The Preservation Coalition's plans had fallen apart because they couldn't access the sites that humans could now open safely. When they returned, the Emperor welcomed them as heroes. The Council held an emergency meeting where Jake presented what they had learned. He showed them the medical advances, the energy solutions, the peaceful technologies. He also told them about the weapons and reality-altering tools that they had wisely refused. Humanity has chosen growth over power, Jake told the assembled ambassadors. We want to share what we learned with everyone. The precursors left their legacy for all of us, not just humans. We're just the key bearers. You're all the inheritors. The vote was unanimous. Humanity would be granted access to all precursor sites, but they would work alongside the Council, not alone. A new organization was formed, the Precursor Initiative, with humans as guides and other species as partners. Princess Ariana would lead it, with Jake as her second-in-command. Months later, Jake stood with Ariana on a balcony overlooking the Crystal City. She no longer trembled when he was near. She had learned to control her new way of thinking, to bridge the gap between logical Caldrith minds and paradoxical human minds. Do you think we made the right choice? She asked him. I think we made the wise choice, Jake replied. Power can wait. Understanding comes first. She took his hand, and this time it wasn't from fear or need. It was from connection, from friendship, maybe from something deeper that they were only beginning to explore. The precursors left us a gift, Ariana said softly, not just their technology but their warning. They showed us what happens when a species reaches too far too fast. Now we have the chance to do better. Jake nodded, looking at the stars. Somewhere out there, dozens of precursor sites waited to be explored. Humanity had earned the right to unlock them, but also the wisdom to take their time doing so. It was a new age for the galaxy, one built on cooperation rather than conquest. And it had all started with forbidden words spoken in a palace, and a princess who had trembled at the sound of a human voice speaking impossible truths. Now they stood together, ready to guide their species into a future that honored both logic and paradox, both restraint and growth. The stars shone bright above them, full of mysteries waiting to be discovered, but they would discover them together, taking each step carefully, learning as they went. That was the real gift of the precursors, not their technology but their warning, and humanity for once had listened.